What's up guys, welcome back to my channel. So today we're going to be doing something very exciting. We're going to be unboxing, setting up, and reviewing this all-new Halot Mage 8K resin 3D printer from Creality. Now I pre-ordered this about 2 weeks ago and it arrived a few days ago. And I have to say, I'm thrilled to try out this machine and see how well it works. Now I've been 3D printing for a while now, but this is my first resin 3D printer. So not only will I be reviewing it, but I'll also be taking my first stab at 3D printing with a resin printer. Now Creality has said that this printer is supposed to be one of the best resin 3D printers on the market, at least for now. So hopefully, as a newcomer to resin 3D printing, it won't be too complicated to figure out, for me at least. So without further ado, let's get started and find out how good this printer is, especially for a newbie like myself. So if you've been following this channel, you'll know that I've been 3D printing for a while now, and I actually unboxed and reviewed several printers on this channel. Now I started my 3D printing journey with the Ender 3 Pro from Creality. I then moved up and bought and been using the Bamboo Lab X1 Carbon, which is still my favorite printer so far. And then I also have been using the FL Sun V400. But when it comes to resin printing, this again is my first resin 3D printer. So I figured why not go for the latest model from a company that has a lot of experience in the 3D printing space. Now because this is going to be a first experience for me, not only will I be unboxing, setting up, and reviewing this printer, but also be learning about the ins and outs when it comes to printing with resin. So please definitely leave me suggestions and tips in the comment section below if I'm doing something wrong or could do something better, or if you just have any advice when it comes to resin 3D printing. So with all that in mind, let's unbox this, set it up, and see what it's all about. And then I'll take my first shot at 3D printing with resin. So as you can see, this box is pretty large and heavy. Now I will admit it is not as heavy as my X1 Carbon, but it's still pretty heavy. It was actually delivered and left at my doorstep upside down, so hopefully the packaging is good and there's nothing wrong with the printer and the printer is all intact, but we'll see in a little bit. Now another thing is there are two versions of this printer. There's the $399 version and then there's a more expensive $599 version, which is the Pro version. Now when I purchased this, I did not know about the Pro version, so I purchased the $399 version, the just standard basic one. And I think the Pro version comes with a resin pump, which I wish I had gotten, but maybe we'll get it a little bit later once I get the hang of 3D printing with resin, since this is my first printer. But let's unbox this and see what it all comes with. So on the box itself, of course, it does have these little tabs at the bottom, which I assume is just like a TV, and you just twist it or unlock it. Yeah, so you just unlock it by pulling it out, and then you lift the top off. I'm going to try to lift this off without actually hitting my overhead camera because it is pretty tall. So I may actually need to shift this a little bit, and I'm hoping that it's pretty secure. Okay, so there is styrofoam in there, and yes, it is packed just like a television set, so it's easy to unpackage, I guess. So there's a good amount of styrofoam, I guess, to keep the printer from moving. Inside also has styrofoam, I guess, just like most 3D printers. So I'm just gonna go ahead and put this to the side. And to remove this, I don't see any handles on the printer itself. This out of the box. Okay, so I'm guessing it is taped on the bottom. Okay, so what I hear about this printer that's unique, and I'm just taking it at face value because this is my first resin 3D printer, is that it does have a flip front, which I think is something that everyone will appreciate because from what I know, all the previous resin printers that I've seen, you just have to lift up the top, which makes it kind of difficult when it comes to keeping your workspace clean. and just finding a place to put this lid when you take it off. So it's nice that it's got this little flip top glass casing so that you can remove your 3D prints. Now I do know that some of the more expensive resin printers do have doors, I guess, which is, you know, I guess useful as well. But this will be the first consumer level resin printer that I know that has a flip top, which is pretty nice. Okay, so we'll take this styrofoam out. Okay, so it looks like you've got your set of scrapers, your tools, and the quick installation guide, as well as USB key and some other accessories. This looks like it is the release film for 3D printer. Okay, so this is the resin film for the, I guess this is for the resin vat or the base. So just a film that you can use and remove whenever it gets dirty or old. Okay, you've got a power plug. Looks like this is a hose. And I'm sure that's probably for the air filter. Nothing else in this styrofoam. So like most 3D printers, you know, this thing is packaged very nicely with everything pretty secure, and really no assembly to this printer, which is nice. You've got the build plate, and then you've got another styrofoam under this build plate. So I'm not going to touch any of that just yet. But what I'll do is I'll go ahead and plug this in, and we'll go through the initial setup process. All right, so inside this little package, you've got, looks like a pretty nice scraper, nice quality scraper. You've got some, I guess these are filters, a set of filters. You've got your USB key. You've got your hex tools. You've got your plastic scraper. Quality certificate, and then the installation guide. Okay, you also get this piece of paper, which is a quick installation guide. And then this is the Cloud app barcode, so you can scan it to get the software and instructions. Okay, so now for the setup. So the first thing we need to do is get the Creality Cloud app by scanning the barcode. And I think I already have an account, but if you don't have an account, you're going to need to create one. Okay, so I guess I didn't have a Creality Cloud account, so I just went ahead and created an account. Okay, so on the USB disk or the USB key that's included, which is this, you also have the manual as well as related videos to how to set this up and use this printer. Or you can download it from their website. Okay, so we need to raise the platform. So loosen the rubber screws on the left and right side of the resin vat and take out the resin vat. Okay, so we'll loosen these. And I'm not sure how I can take this out without actually raising the platform. Okay, so I'm going to guess I'm going to have to plug this in first to raise the platform, assuming it's like any other 3D printer. Okay, so let's go ahead and press the system button. Nope. Tool. Okay, I'm going to press the home, so that will definitely automatically raise the platform. Okay, and then we'll take out this styrofoam. And we'll remove this. Okay, so loosen the... Just make sure it doesn't go all the way down. You just stop it right there. Okay, loosen the 4 screws on the junction plate. So I guess that is a replacement for this screen. Loosen the 4 screws on the junction plate. Loosen the 4 screws on the junction plate of the forming platform. Press the calibration card against the screen. Okay, it says something about a calibration card. Okay, so I did have to watch the installation video that came on that USB key, and it turns out that this little instruction manual, or this paper, is the calibration card. It's not really a card, it's just a piece of paper. So basically all you have to do is, according to the video, just put it in there, and then they did the clean stuff. So please confirm that the printing platform has been removed and there are moderate consumables in the vat. Please set the exposure time of the test. So let's do that. Click next. And you'll see there's a little light, I guess. Okay, once it's done, you just click back. Exposure. And that's the exposure. So I'm not exactly sure what that does, but in the video they did these. So we're going to continue to do those as well. So the next thing we need to do is unscrew these 4 screws. So according to the instructions, as well as the video I just watched, the next thing we need to do once that's done is flip this upside down. And I don't know if it really matters, but you know, put the calibration card on the screen and leave it there. But the next thing we need to do is use these hex tools to unscrew or loosen these 4 bolts for the build plate itself. So for the time being, I mean, I have my own hex screw set and I'd recommend using those, but you know, these work just as well. So we're just going to loosen these bolts. And by the way, this thing is not quiet. The fan on this is pretty loud, as you can hear. Okay, so we're going to loosen the bolt so that the build plate is loose. And then once that's done, you just press home. And then it'll go up. And I guess according to some of my friends who are more experienced with resin printing, 3D printing, this Z-axis movement is actually pretty fast. So, you know, I'm glad that's a good thing as well. Now, if you were to get the Pro model, the pump would be right here in this little crevice, but I'm not exactly sure how it works. So maybe at some point in time later, I'll get the Pro version and we can compare both models. Okay, so once it's down, you're going to want to hold the plate down, at least based on the video that I watched, and then tighten the bolts. And I hate these hex tools that come with 3D printers. Okay, so you're going to hold the plate down and tighten the bolts. Not super tight, but just enough to keep them in place. And that just ensures that the plate is level, so you aren't going to be able to remove the calibration card. And then once that's done, okay, move up the Z-axis to a proper level. Okay, remove the card, and then put the resin tray back in place. And then tighten it down. Okay, so once that's done, you just got to put this little, I guess, hose on the back, which you just stretch it out according to the video. And then you just lock it to the back here. Okay, and then that will be the setup, and then you should be ready to print. So there are some test prints on the USB key that comes with the printer, which I am going to test out. I do have a bottle of 8K resin here that I bought. Now this isn't the Creality resin, but I'm going to use it nonetheless. And it is made for 8K printing, I guess. Okay, so just as a precaution, because resin can be toxic, I am wearing gloves. And then I did also angle the filter, this tube, out towards the outside where I've opened the window so that any fumes will go out of this room. And I'll probably move this to either an outdoor space or to my garage when I do future printings. Okay, so let's go ahead and remove this. Okay, we'll just fill this vat up. Not completely. Then we'll close the lid. And we'll take this USB key, plug it in. Choose print, software, a Mage Berserker file. Okay, we'll just use this Mage Berserker file and we'll print that. Okay, so while it's printing, we'll go ahead and just set the camera up to do a time lapse, and I'll just do a voiceover of the specs while it's doing the print job itself. But we'll see how it turns out. Okay, so now that the printer is set up and while it's printing, let's talk about the specs and the printing process. So this printer does have a 10.3-inch monochrome 8K LCD screen for high precision and high quality prints. It's also got a built-in smart air purifier with a replaceable activated carbon filter that does help to clean the toxic odors out of the air when you're printing. Although you should still print this in a well-ventilated area. Now the build plate does support a build volume of up to 228 by 128 by 230 millimeters at over 33 million pixels. Now what that means is that it's got some very high quality and detailed prints. It's also probably one of the faster resin 3D printers available today, and according to Creality, should be able to print 12 times faster than any of the existing resin 3D printers available. It's got a print speed of about 1 to 5 seconds per layer and a motor speed of up to 100 millimeters per second. And best of all, it's also priced very reasonably at around $399 for this basic model. And then of course there's the $599 Pro model, which again has a built-in smart resin pump that will automatically refill your resin tray when it runs low, which is of course a nice feature and something that I haven't seen or heard of in any kind of resin printer existing. So definitely a nice addition. What's also nice about this printer is that it supports a variety of different resins, including standard, castable, and flexible resins, just giving you the flexibility to print a wide range of models. In addition to that, the Creality Slicer software is also very user-friendly. It's got a simple interface that makes it easy to set up and control the printing process. And then in addition to that, it's also got a wireless feature so you can print remotely. Another feature that this printer has that I think pretty much every resin 3D printer has, but correct me if I'm wrong, is a resin detection sensor, which helps to prevent failed prints by alerting you when the resin level is low or if there's a problem with the resin itself. Now again, according to Creality, they did say that this resin printer is 12 times faster than most available printers. However, I don't really have anything to compare it to since this is my first resin 3D printer. So you're gonna have to tell me if that's true or not. But so far, this print is gonna take about 19 hours. Anyways, because this print will take about 19 hours, we'll go ahead and check back to see how it turns out when it's done, and I'll give you my honest opinion. Okay guys, so I let this thing print overnight, and it took about 19 hours to complete this first print of mine. So as you can see, there are just a ton of support structures stuck to the build plate itself. All right, so let's go ahead and see how that thing turned out, at least for my first print. I was actually kind of nervous because I thought the print was coming off the build plate, but I think it's supposed to actually look like that, so I'm not sure if it came off the build plate or not, but we'll find out in a minute. Okay, so let's lift this up. And as you can see, it's just hanging there on the build plate itself. So I don't have the cleaning and curing unit, so I'm just gonna do this manually and clean it itself and then probably put it in the sun to cure it for a couple hours. So I did go ahead and buy a couple of buckets, small buckets from Lowe's, and then some alcohol, and this is all 91% alcohol, from Sam's to use for this first build. I did order the curing and cleaning unit, so that should be here in a couple of days. So this will just be manual for now until that unit arrives. So I'm just going to go ahead and fill this bucket with this alcohol. So that's done, that's one bucket. And that is the second bucket, which should be enough to dip it. Actually, I might need to remove some of that alcohol now that I think about it, because when I place the print in there, it's going to displace some of the liquid, and I'm hoping it won't overflow. Now I think it is too big to actually fit the whole thing in there, so I'm probably going to take some of the supports off before I actually put it in there. So I'm going to unscrew the build plate, take it off, yeah, and it is too big. And I'm not sure if this is the right way to do this, but you know, first time learning pains or growing pains. Okay, we're gonna just scrape this off. And if there is an easier way to get this stuff off the build plate, let me know. But for right now, I'm just prying it off. It came off pretty easy. All right, so I'm just gonna put this build plate aside. And I think I've taken off enough to at least just dip it in there. So I'm just gonna shake it around in this alcohol, let it sit a little bit. And this did finish this morning, so it's been standing there for a little while. And I was reading online, and it is recommended to clean, remove the structure supports, and then cure it, just because once you cure it, resin becomes a little bit brittle and more solid, so it may break easier. So right now I'm just going ahead. Oh, it looks like the end part broke off. Wonder where that went. Oh, there it is. But so far it looks pretty nice, at least from what I can see. But we'll go ahead and clean it a little bit more. Okay, and I'm going to take off as many of the structure support as I can, which they do come off pretty easy, which is nice. I'm going to be careful around these arrows right here, because those are pretty fragile. And these support structures actually seem to come off a lot easier than on non-resin 3D printers, so that's nice in itself, but there are definitely a lot more supports. This is pretty messy. I'm just going to move this over here. Oh, and the arrow back here broke off. We're almost there. It's also nice as you get the detail of the hair too. I actually think I might have broken the sword off. Which should have gone right here. But it's broken off. Then I broke an arrow off too. So you do really have to be careful when you're taking these apart. But so far, looks pretty good. Minus a few, initial beginner rookie mistakes. But overall, the quality of this thing looks really nice. It's a very solid looking print. Smooth too as well. So something that you can't achieve with a regular non-resin 3D printer, I think. Be a lot more complicated. So I'm definitely happy with how this thing turned out. Super solid. I'm just going to go and cure this, and we'll see how it looks when it's done curing in the sun for a couple hours. So we'll be back. Okay, so this thing's been curing for about 2 hours in the sun. Now, like I mentioned before, one thing that I realized overnight was that I'm probably also going to need to buy a washing and curing machine for my 3D prints, which is a small expense and something that anyone who's got this printer should probably also consider, especially if you're looking into doing 3D printing with resin printers. And to be fair, because most of my experience is with non-resin 3D printers, I'm going to probably play around a little bit with more of this printer and even try to print a benchy to see how fast it compares to a standard non-resin 3D printer, at least just for my reference. Now, from a performance standpoint, this Creality Halot-Mage 8K resin 3D printer does perform well, and that's coming from someone who's still just a little bit new to 3D resin printing. Now, I have to say, I am very impressed with the performance of this 3D printer. Now overall, as you can see, the prints do come out with incredible detail and accuracy. They've got smooth surfaces and sharp edges. The printer itself is also very fast with a print speed of up to 100 millimeters per hour, although I'm not yet quite sure how that compares to non-resin 3D printing. Now the only thing that I feel that I have to get used to with these 3D printers is having to refill the resin and also needing to cure and wash my prints. But overall, the quality is definitely, in my opinion, better than any kind of regular 3D printer. For me, the verdict is still out. I haven't decided if I like resin printing better than FDM printing, or if I like resin printing overall. I definitely do like the quality of the prints themselves. But I'm gonna have to continue playing with this just to see how it compares. But overall, right now, I'm really happy with the purchase and the quality of the printer and the features that it does have. Now, minus a few hiccups, and a few learning opportunities. In conclusion, I do highly recommend the Creality Halot-Mage 8K Resin 3D printer to anyone who's looking for a high quality resin 3D printer. The printer itself is easy to set up and comes fully assembled. It's easy to use and it's got excellent performance and amazing quality, as you can see from this little first print that I made. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video and found it helpful. Please make sure you like and leave a message in the comment section below with any suggestions, requests, questions, and even tips. I'd love to hear from you. I'd definitely love to hear from you any recommendations on how I should clean the cleaning trays or any of these printer parts, or even just remove some of the resin themselves or restore some of the IPA alcohol itself. Any tips that you might have for a beginner like me is absolutely appreciated. I also did pre-order the K1 Speedy 3D printer from Creality, so I expect to be unboxing and reviewing that in a couple weeks as well. I'm super excited and pumped to get that printer. So if that's something that interests you, make sure you subscribe and ring that bell icon to get notified when I post new content. Until next time, see ya.